What's up, everybody, for the pre-call, diving into being impeccable with your word. I know we kind of touched on it on the call Sunday, and I brought up, an experience that I remembered talking with my brother at a younger age, right? How possibly I allowed a spell to be cast on me, and just being able to have awareness of it and be able to see where I can connect to what Don Miguel Ruiz is talking about, right? Like, if I can acknowledge that that's true and it's happened in my life, then I have to give some validation to the method he's talking about, right? So that's kind of how I look at finding those things and figuring out then if I can use the other tools in the book to kind of unwind it and make better sense of it, right? So, man, being impeccable with your word, I've thought about it a lot this week. I've listened to the chapter 3 different times, and so I kind of really wanted to dive in quite a bit to how I look at it in regards to mental health, your own well-being, and personal growth. So, gonna let it rip. I actually wrote a bunch this week. So, power of self-talk, right? Like how we talk to ourselves, what the voice is. I think that is our perception, right? Like, that is our perception of a thing, is how we view it, and then how we translate it in our head. And so that's the self-talk. And so that creates our perception. And whether that is positive or negative can be shaped by a lot of things from last chapter, right? Like, our perception of situations is going to be based on that dream of the world, dream of the universe, or whatever we want to call it, right? That societal belief system. And so we have to acknowledge the power of our voice and the power of talk. And if we can take first, like, awareness there, right? And like make that a new agreement, right? That being impeccable with your word is important because our word has power. And proof of word having power isn't just, look at unbelievable communicators, right? Look at great speakers, look at musicians. These are all the same things. This is power of word, power of sound. Our voice is the manifestation of our thoughts in an outward communicating way. So there's extra power to it, right? Like, so the thought that you have in your brain is one thing, but to actually say something, that thought has to tell your body to do a whole host of fucking things to produce this noise in the order it comes out, so that someone else can use it or react to it or change, right? Like, whether that is saying something as simply as warning someone so that they don't get hurt, right? Like, that is power in our voice, right? Like, there's some level of giving a warning for someone's danger that we are, I don't know if soothsaying's the fucking right word, but something along those lines. That we are trying to give guidance, right? That we are trying to provide power with that value of the word. And so seeing that it has that value and it can have that power on other people. Look at the way musicians hold attention in a concert. Look at the way Tony Robbins or speakers or anything hold attention with the power of their voice and the words they choose and the inflection they choose and how they master it to be able to tell the story that they want to get across. Which, what they're trying to do is elicit a feeling, trying to elicit an aha. And the better they are at it, the better they know what they can get you to elicit. And then that helps you, right? So if we can see that someone else can have that control over us if we give it to them, that power, simply by the use of their voice. What about the power that we have over ourselves with our own? And that's where all the thoughts and all these other things come in the way, right? Like, this is where the positive affirmation stuff, the manifestation talk, this is where all that really becomes valuable. Is because during all that, you get to actually verbally cast a spell. Because having negative self-thoughts are one thing. Negative self-speak is another level of it that's giving it more validation. So choosing and being intentional with my self-talk, that it's loving, that it's caring, that it is talking to me in a way to get me to take actions I need to take. And it's up to us to figure that out. Some people need to be yelled at and some people need to be patted on the back. Whichever one it is for you, figure out how to use it as the tool. Figure out how to talk to yourself so that you outweigh the other side of the talk. Like, I look at a lot of the negative self-talk I have. I'm hard on myself, and I know that. And that's a gift of awareness that I know I have better to give. But I understand that I can punish myself with it and really beat myself up over it, of not being enough and not doing well enough and judging yesterday's fuck-ups with hindsight that I have now of I should have known or could have done better. Letting that go changed a lot for me. And being able to admit that I am always giving my best and therefore I don't have to second guess. We just keep learning. We find out afterwards where the faults were, where the mistakes were, and be able to talk to myself in that way of like, we're learning. This is a normal feeling. We're supposed to feel this. This negative self-talk is what keeps us interested in getting better, but it's how I have to choose to frame it and what power I choose to give it. And I think it's important that we choose to play the other side of the coin to our advantage of, I may not naturally talk to myself in a nice way, but I can choose to. And what if I spent a little bit of time verbally talking to myself in a positive way? Perhaps I get better at it. And if I get better at it, maybe I believe it. And if I believe it, maybe it does naturally start to occur. But it doesn't start without the action. Healthy communication. I mean, no doubt about it, right? This is the most obvious part of being impeccable with your word, is just how you communicate with those around you. And look at what the power your word really has. You know, if we've made the agreement that the word has really power, then you have to be responsible with how you use it. And being impeccable with your word allows you to practice a better way to reduce like misunderstandings, having healthier relationships. It gets rid of anxiety, because I know, Bonnie and I talked about it yesterday on the podcast about relationships, but choosing to be impeccable with our word makes us both really consistent. And it makes us both predictable, which gives trust and gives freedom for your partner to be able to be vulnerable and be able to express their honesty, their truth, their fears, any of that, because they know that you're going to respond in a way that's going to be supportive, that you're not all over the fucking map, man. If someone's up and down and emotional and led by that chaos all the time, you're not safe around them. It doesn't feel a predictable energy other than you can predict chaos about them, and I don't always want to throw my thoughts there. So being more impeccable with your word will help you and all the relationships around you, and this is what we've talked about a ton. This is really the main building block with it. But the self-talk is building that relationship with yourself, and where that limitation is of how much you can love yourself, how much you can trust yourself, how much can you be vulnerable to yourself, will limit the ability that you have with anyone else. Building trust. Back to what I was getting to, just there, right? Like that, being impeccable with your word makes you consistent. And when you're consistent, people trust you. And when people trust you, people rely on you and opportunities come. Because you don't give it to someone that you don't think can show up half the time. You got to lean on people that you know are consistent, that you know show up to the party. I mean, the guys in this group, the women in this group who've made the most progress are the ones who've been consistent, the ones who've been most impeccable with their word, that they're showing up to learn, that they're interested in progress and putting purpose behind the intentions that they take every day. You can see that in our group members, and you can see that big change that starts coming over people. We've seen it in Antar and Sam, Josh, Caitlin has been fucking crushing it, Cody. All these people have been able to continue to push themselves and maintain a better mindset to kind of continue to raise the level of awareness they have, which is their capabilities. And opportunities have continued to find all of these people. It's not on accident. It's because they open their eyes to be able to see them. When you're really consistent with your word, people trust you. Be like, oh, when he says he's going to show up, he'll show up. Man, I can't tell you how much of a living I have made off of simply that is a trait that I really held deep. Is that if I say I'll be somewhere, I will be somewhere. And that goes for saying it's going to be fucking Uganda or Dubai. But if I say I'll be somewhere, I'm there. I got really lucky growing up that one of the things I was taught was being a liar is the fucking worst. You can fuck up, man, but don't be a liar. And especially don't lie to yourself. That's what came later in life, is that you're not allowed to lie to you. Because there's a lot of stuff you do that feels out of obligation for other people, right? And if you say you'll do it, you do it, so you're not a liar and all these type of things. But at some point, you've got to take the action to say, I don't want to do these things, and that's okay if I say no. I'm not here to please you, and that doesn't mean I don't support you, right? I can choose no, and I can choose to tell you because I don't want to. I don't have to lie and come up with an excuse. I don't have to dodge it. It's simply that's not where I'd like to put my energy, and no one else gets a choice in that. But that being consistent with it allows people to trust you. It allows your partner to know that they can lean on you and you'll be consistent and you're there to hold space, that you're not trying to correct something. It just allows people to be able to count on you more. It's consistency with how you speak and how you handle yourself and how you handle your word. Without it, success isn't going to happen. It's fucking impossible. But it all starts with the word and trust that you build with yourself. Gossip, rumors. I don't know exactly when I fully dove in, but there was a point a few years ago where zero drama is tolerated in my universe. I don't gossip. I don't do bullshit. There isn't any back talk. I don't do any of that. I don't give a fuck. I don't want to be part of it. I don't want to rip on people. I just don't want to be part of it. And so I don't. I can leave. I can not contribute. I can ignore. I can even step up and say like, hey man, I'm just not interested in talking about any of that. So that's a boundary I'm going to set. And now the consequence for crossing that boundary is I walk away from our conversations. And if that tends to be the only thing you talk about, then we probably aren't going to have a lot of conversations. But that was a choice, you made and a boundary I set and I hold. Because I'm not interested. I don't want to deal with it. It's a waste of my fucking energy. I don't give a fuck what other people are doing in their lives. I care about what I'm doing in mine. I care about what other people who feel about their life the way I do. Drama, bullshit, your problems, your drama that's avoidable, I don't fucking care. It's not tolerated. I don't have any of that around me. And that's one of the reasons I built the world and universe I've got here. Is I can hold that sacred now. I don't have to be around people like that. Being impeccable with your word, like that's a boundary. I don't deal with it. People around me know I don't deal with it. It's just how it is. It's a nice thing to be known for, that I don't tolerate bullshit. Not from me and not from, if I don't tolerate it from me, I sure as fuck ain't going to tolerate it from anyone else. Healing from past wounds. In the same way that our words have power to help us and change our lives and create the world we want, they've got power to harm us. And those wounds take a really long time to heal. Trauma and everything else, man, leaves this big imprint on us one way or another. And deciding the value that you give that imprint is something we've all got to work through, especially if it gets worked into like the hardwiring of the system. But it's our responsibility to notice that it's a problem, and we're the ones who have to seek out and find the action and the answer. And it may be different for anyone else, but keep exploring to find the answer and realize what you're learning along the way. What you're also learning along the way about yourself is that you'll take action and keep trying until you find it. There's a certain level of commitment that you have to yourself there, that it's worth the effort. And that's what really starts to resonate over time. Not necessarily, just fixing these old wounds one by one, right? But it's that you're building that trust back in yourself. You're acknowledging problems and you're being able to find help. And you're being able to say like, well, I don't know the treatment for this wound. Let's keep searching. But let's not ignore that it's a wound. Let's not ignore that it's a trait that got hardwired in from something. Let's quit adding salt to it and let it heal. Let's thank it possibly for what it gave us, because there's always something to learn there. But that's really how you start healing those wounds, is be able to see what you learned from it. Man, my machine's got a lot of scars, and I don't have an interest of a life that doesn't have one. A life with scars means like I took some risk. Emotionally too. But the highs are worth it and the lows are going to be understood, because they're both coming and they're both going to pass. One of the things that came with this awareness work and plant medicine for me was a different understanding of empathy. And I had empathy. I started to develop empathy for other people and other people's situations, and I could see that. But I really struggled with empathy for myself and for anything that I was in. Like, it really, with having the total accountability, I couldn't really find the right line to hold with self-talk. Because if I'm totally accountable, I tend to get pretty abusive to the guy that fucks up. And it's easy to do nothing but yell at who I used to be. And why was I so fucking dumb for creating that? All those things. But simply having empathy for myself that I have for others with his, they didn't know. So it's either someone's malicious, right? And fuck them. Or they didn't know. They're not aware enough. They didn't know what they were doing and it wasn't personal. And that's the same way I've got to treat former me. They didn't know. He didn't know. He was doing the best he could, but he didn't know. He had no idea what was coming. He wasn't ever taught this. So quit being fucking mean to him for not knowing. Thank him for surviving it and getting us here. Because we're not here without that person going through that. We learned from it. That's how we take power over those wounds. Is being able to be impeccable with how we think about them. It's our perception that we can be impeccable about, and that's what creates our reality. Being impeccable with finding the abundance and stuff. Reducing guilt and regret. I mean, how many times you react quickly, say something, and then later have to apologize? The better you are at being impeccable with your word, you cut out that thing, right? It's great that you've got to a point where you can apologize and fix it and have the awareness of the action and want to change it. But the further steps of this is cutting out that middle area where we don't say the thing anymore. And as you get better at it, it's saying the thing less often. And there's only some times when it gets super fucking triggered, you slip. The better we get at this, the more time we save and the less time we have to spend apologizing for the thing we said. I remember when I first started kind of figuring myself out a bit more and holding myself to these ideas and understanding my reactions being more uncontrollable. The way like a feeling pops up. I thought that those two things were immediately connected, right? That feeling happens and then there's an action that goes place, and they are a bit. Like, that's the Pavlovian response. But you can stop it. And you can recognize that that's the pattern, and you can start to recognize it coming on earlier, and that saves so much time and emotional energy apologizing for a thing that you know you didn't fucking mean. Just skip the step of saying it. Be like, oh, I'm about to say something fucking stupid. And just stop. Like, oh, I'm already frustrated. I know that if I get pushed right now, I'm going to say something stupid. So get out of the scenario. Or be honest and be like, hey, I'm really overwhelmed right now. I need 10 minutes to get my shit together. You can say that. Go take a minute and set your clock for 10 minutes and sit still, but be intentional with that 10 minutes and take it. But that's being impeccable with your word. Think about what that would teach the people in your family. Of like, hey, I just need a minute. And that's okay to take. But it starts saving a lot of that bullshit. Get tired of being mad at yourself for saying something that you know better than you shouldn't have done. Being impeccable with your word also continues to just cultivate self-awareness. It's that being able to recognize that flinch, that trigger, and be able to take different actions instead. That's going to continue to allow you to shape and create the actions that are going to make us who we are, is by trimming the fat that is that bullshit. Those things that we know of, like, fuck, I'm better if I don't do that. I'm better if I don't react that way. Fuck, can I stop yelling at myself for yesterday's fuck up? Break that pattern and move forward. And have the self-awareness of noticing what you're doing, right? And being able to say, I know where this is, I know what it comes from, we can stop. Thank you, negative voice, and move on. Like a fucking just nagging bullshit thorn in your side, instead of giving it any more power. It's up to you, the power that you put to that word. Impeccable with your word is going to continue to strengthen your boundaries like we talked about earlier. And your boundaries are something for you to hold. They're not something that you have to argue about and have to fight about. They're not something that you verbally correct people on. We'll talk about it. Please, somebody bring up where they struggle with holding boundaries and what that means for the other people in their life. And we'll talk about it this week on the call. I think that one's a really important one of how you choose to hold your boundaries when someone else crosses them, including yourself. Positive affirmations, manifestation talk. I think all of it's great. I've done it. But doing those things and not taking the action doesn't work. Doing both adds to that frequency. Doing it consistently adds to that frequency. Eliminating the negative side of the self-talk adds to that frequency in abundance. So you continue to cultivate and create that. Being impeccable with your word is going to do more to empower yourself and the people around you than anything else. The people around you will feel safe to be their best self because they trust that you're consistent. They know you show up, you're a fucking leader. Whether you would like it or not, knowing people that take action and follow up on the things they say has a huge impact when you watch. So being able to show up long term, be able to do that, gives people proof and evidence that it's possible. You know that you can support yourself. You have people around you that talk the same way. And when that line is held by not just you, but your community, it all elevates together. And Not Dead Yet Life is about keeping that part of it. Be impeccable with your word. That's the biggest thing that we can change. The way you speak, the way you communicate, and also the way you understand communication. Take accountability for all for it. If you don't understand, be able to ask questions instead of be offended. And figure out how to communicate in a way that doesn't put people on guard. That's on us. If people always react to us negatively, maybe it's time for us to address the way we communicate. Are we impeccable with our word, or do we come across this certain way? This has been shit. I've talked about it with one-on-ones with all of my clients. Jordan and Boo, we talked about it. It's huge. This is the biggest opportunity you've got to make a lot of ground, is this first agreement. So I look forward to chatting with you guys Sunday, and I hope you guys like the call.